would you spend just a second typing into the chat, if you've been paying attention, what's been your most favourite Olympic event so far that you've watched or you've heard or you've listened to? I should have known, Jamie, that yours would be rugby. The good old rugby sevens. Variety, track, swimming. Brilliant. So everyone has been paying attention. Good. And hopefully you'll notice that I'm on brand this morning with my Team GB shirt. Okay, right. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk about performing under pressure and learning a little bit from some of our athletes that you have been paying attention to, what we can do to perform under pressure in business, because there is a massive parallel between the two. Some of you will have heard my story already, so apologies, but I will do it very quickly. I've been massively fascinated by why people do what they do. I've spent over 17 years from an HR perspective trying to work out how we get people to perform at their best in organisations. And more latterly, my son has an ambition to go to the Olympics. And so I describe myself as a performance parent, because I've been witnessing and learning as we go along what it takes for athletes to get to the top of their game, and more importantly, what it takes for the support team to make sure that they are not doing things to impede or hinder their performance. So with that, let's get stuck in. The first thing I'm going to share with you is a little bit about Novak. So some of you will know that during this Olympics, he's won his first gold medal, which feels to me like a little bit of a bizarre thing to say, given how successful he has been as a tennis player. But unfortunately for him, he hadn't made the gold medal match to win until last week, in fact, on Sunday. But there are some amazing videos of him talking about what it's taken for him to be successful. I have the links in this presentation, so when we finished, I will encourage the Networking In gang to share some of these videos so you can actually listen to the athletes talking about what they talk about. But for Novak, he talks about mental strength is not a gift. He was interviewed, and the interviewer claimed that one of his gifts was mental strength, and he actually corrected them. And he said, it's something that comes with work. You're a human being. Those that are champions are the ones that don't stay in the emotions too long. They experience it, they acknowledge it, they release it, they bounce back, and they reset. And for me, I think that's a really powerful way of thinking about what we might need to do when we're under pressure, when things perhaps haven't gone according to what we might have hoped, and the fact that we will experience huge emotions associated with our business. But if we take a little bit of Novak's wisdom, that we experience it, we acknowledge it, we release it, we bounce back, and we reset. So I wanted to share the performance pressure curve. And this is a little bit of research that has been done to think about how we each individually perform under pressure. So you'll see two axes. You've got performance on the left-hand side with low at the bottom and high at the top. And then you've got pressure running alongside it. And then you've got a bell curve from the low side all the way to the very high side. Each of us will experience pressure differently. So this isn't a universal kind of model. What stretch feels for some of us will be different to other people. So it's worth just being mindful that this curve will look and we will experience it differently. But we have what we call an ideal zone. So that's where pressure is moderate to high, and therefore our performance is in the high range, and it comes to that optimal performance. So if anyone says to you, pressure is a bad thing, I'm going to say to you, it's not. We actually do need some pressure in order to perform at our ideal peak. However, there's also this zone of delusion, and I experience this a lot with my clients, which is that zone of we keep pushing ourselves and trying to convince ourselves that if we keep pushing through that pressure, we will continue to perform at an optimal level. It's the classic, I will continue to work harder and longer and later. I'll get up earlier and I'll try and do more. And what the research shows us is actually we become under strain and we burn out in those scenarios and we're not effective. And actually we need to do some things in order to get ourselves back to that optimal performance. So there's kind of a little bit of a background to performing under pressure. But what does having a performance mindset mean if we take ourselves back to thinking a little bit like business athletes? Well, here's the perspective. We could be experiencing a number of different things in terms of how we're experiencing pressure. So we might find ourselves stuck, and we will have seen some athletes in the last couple of weeks who have found themselves stuck. The one that really strikes me was the pole vaulter, who didn't actually achieve one jump during the Olympics, even though she's at the top of her game. So something has happened with regards to her ability to perform under pressure at kind of the biggest games that she'll probably perform at, and she's got stuck and she hasn't been able to break through. There's this adapting zone. So we are adapting to the circumstances, the situation, and what's going on, and that allows us to perform under pressure, but not necessarily at our best. And then there's movement, and that is really, really responding to the circumstances, knowing what we need, doing what we need to do in order to perform at our best. So ultimately, we need direction. And if you think about yourself right now, in terms of how you are currently performing under the pressure that you are under, where are you on the scale? Are you at 0%? Are you at 100%? And I'm not going to ask you to answer the question, but interestingly, no one ever answers the question that they're at 100%. So there's always room and opportunity to improve how we're performing when we're under pressure. So a little bit in terms of what to think about with regards to what is kind of the performance equation that we need to think about when we are performing under pressure. And there are 3 factors that we take into account. One is structure. So think about this in terms of what's my purpose, what's my direction, why am I here, kind of what's the goal? And in parallel with that, what are my resetting and reframing routines when I get lost off of my structure? And what are the ways I measure my progress? So there's no point in saying I want to be an Olympian in X sport if you don't know what's your training plan, what's your purpose, and what are the ways that you're going to measure how you're going to get there. So some of the ways that the current athletes will be measuring that historically, because obviously they're right there right now, is what are some of the times that they've achieved? What are some of the places that they've achieved in previous competitions? And that will be the structures that they're using to check how they're doing. The second piece that we all need is a skill set. So unfortunately, to my dismay, I am never going to be a 100-meter sprinter because I simply do not have the skill set to do it. Could I train in it? Yes, possibly, but I'm still never going to be there. But for all of us running businesses, we've all likely chosen a business or a kind of area or a niche because we have a skill set that we're able to use in order to run our business and perform in our business. However, we can't stand still. So we have to learn new things. We also have to focus on the familiar. And we have to kind of pay attention to how we do it. So are we remote? Are we virtual? Are we in place, in person? All of that is contributing to us performing under pressure and in our own business. So be paying attention to what are the skills that you need in order to be successful. The last piece then, and the piece that kind of I focus on heavily, both in my business, but also with my son, is the mindset piece. It's a muscle. Often we think about it as quite linear, quite specific, but it actually is a muscle. It's in our brains, which is a muscle in its own right. So what are some of the things that we're talking about with regards to mindset? We're talking about the ability to accept the discomfort. So I spend a lot of time thinking and working with people who want to learn and do something different. what's the mindset that you have to have? Well, unfortunately, the mindset that you have to have in that space is to know that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not learning. So having the ability to accept that we're going to be in some discomfort isn't going to enable us to perform under pressure and be at the top of our game. But also how we engage deliberately. So we think through some of the things that we need to be prepared for, and we connect with others who have been in our space, are in our space, might not even be in our space, but can offer different perspectives and different ways of thinking. So let me give you a real life example that has happened to me in the last year. So some of you know that I am studying a master's, nearly at the end. So that is my positive, optimistic outcome for the next 6 months, that I will finish it. But as part of that master's, I had to deliver a group presentation with 2 other colleagues. We'd agreed a format and a style that we wanted to use as part of our PowerPoint slides. And we'd each agreed which section we were going to write and which we were going to present. So we'd all designed it, we'd collated it in a central document that we could all get access to. And then unbeknownst to me, one of my colleagues decided to redesign the whole presentation without talking to any of us. And then suddenly presented it to us and goes, here's the final presentation. So in that moment, I wanted to yell and I wanted to scream and I wanted to lose my head, because what they'd done was actually completely rewritten half of my slides and it didn't make sense. And they hadn't paid attention to the fact that I actually designed my slides in a way that were very specific to how I wanted to present them. So the rage and the anger was super high. But I had the ability in that split second to go, this rage and this anger isn't going to be helpful. We've got 2 hours until we need to deliver. What ultimately do I need to do right now? And I needed to let go of the anger and the rage and all of the expletives that I wanted to say. And I needed to go back and say, lovely, thank you, however. And so I had that conversation. I reverted my slides back. And we actually did an amazing job. We did over the presentation and it was super successful and we got loads of positive feedback. However, in hindsight, and if I'd have done what I would have done probably even 4 or 5 years ago and the rage and the anger had come out, that presentation that we delivered would have got impacted. We wouldn't have performed at our best and it wouldn't have been a performance under pressure example. So it's those little things often that we're not even paying attention to, that this performance equation can be really helpful in terms of thinking about how we can get the most out of the situation that we're presented with. So just in terms of creating momentum, often the areas that we focus on really super heavily are the structure and the skill set. The area that often gets missed is the mindset. Possibly you're a unique group because you run your own business and you'll know that you spend a lot of time with yourself, and therefore mindset might be more in kind of focus. But when I'm spending a lot of time in medium to large businesses, the mindset is very rarely focused on, if at all. And particularly with those that I coach, it's very rarely focused on. What tends to be focused on is mindset as a symptom. So we often hear a lot about mental health in the workplace. And it's kind of, once that mindset has got to that burnout stage, then it becomes a symptom and we need to fix it. However, I come from the school of thought that actually mindset's a muscle. It's something we can be building on a day-by-day basis. It's something that needs exercising. And therefore, hopefully, by exercising and working with it, it doesn't become a symptom that we need to fix. It becomes something that actually we're building on a day-by-day basis so that it's strong in the moment that we need it. This is my favourite picture of the current Olympics. I love this picture because it really focuses on the different stages that you might be in terms of the race that you're running. And it doesn't have to be a 100-metre sprint. But the principle around performing under pressure is it's about where our attention is. Our energy follows. So if you can imagine each of those competitors, they were purely focusing, highly likely, on that finish line. If they got distracted and started focusing on the crowd that were yelling really loudly, or the cameraman that might have been running beside them, they're not focusing on performing under pressure. That's where their attention will have gone. They will have got distracted, and that risks our ability to achieve our best. And you will have seen it in some of the races where the person in front starts celebrating 10 meters before that finish line and they get overtaken. They've not maintained that performance mindset, and therefore they've lost the race accordingly, because their attention has gone elsewhere. So the prime issue that we need to focus on from a mindset and performing under pressure perspective is where we're focusing that attention and what we're doing in that moment. And please do not get me wrong, this is hard. Our brains are wired to think about all sorts of different things. So how can we be present in the moment in order to do that? So quick exercise. If I ask you to think about if I ask you to not think about pink elephants, what do you all do? Well, you all think about pink elephants. And that's kind of an example of how our mind works. Even if we tell it not to do something, it is likely to do it, because our brain doesn't hear the not. It hears the think about pink elephants. So managing our kind of where our mind is really important. And it's a kind of organizing principle. It's no different to riding a bike. The organizing principle around riding a bike is balance. The organizing principle around managing your mindset is around where your attention is, your energy will flow. So very, very quick tool for you to use is around what I describe as control circles. So the skill of being able to do this is we focus our attention on what we can control. There are plenty of things that we can't control, and there are some things that we can influence. And what we need to practice, and we need to build the muscle in, is ensuring that we're not spending too much of our time in the can't controls. So if you think about that race that I was just talking about, I can't control the cameraman that might be running alongside me who is distracting my attention, but I can control whether I focus on him or not. I can't control the weather and whether it's raining and it's slippy on the track, but I can control focusing my attention on my race and what I'm doing. And that's how this kind of skill set and this little model works. We recognize what we can't control and we let it go. Sounds really simple, not always. We accept what we can influence, and then we choose where we spend our time on what we can control and what we look at. You'll notice in the left-hand corner of my slides, there's gazing red to blue. So I'm going to share with you the model that gazing red to blue talk about. And the way to think about this is red head, blue head. So red head is when we're distracted, we're disconnected from the task at hand. We're focusing our attention on our doubt and our internal dialogue. We're overwhelmed. We might be fixated on something. So my son, as some of you know, shoots. We've been working really heavily on this. He can't get fixated on the clay target that he's just missed. He has to now, when he's moving between stands, focus on the immediate clay that's ahead of him. Because the moment he continues to be fixated on that previous clay, he's lost that current clay. So it carries over. And it's that past, focusing on that past, or actually going, what do I need to fix in order to hit that current clay, which is focusing on the future, creates this loop and means that we're not present in the moment. Blue head is where we want to be, which is about being focused and present in this exact moment, doing what I need to do right now. So it's about having trust. It's about having stillness. It's being present. It's being specific, and it's concentrating. And it's having the ability to notice when we get distracted, because we will. Our brains will take us to other places. So we'll get distracted and we'll think about other things. We bring ourselves back and we get ourselves back into the moment of what do I need to focus on right now, right here, right now. So red head, blue head, in the moment when you're performing under pressure, whatever that may be, whether it's giving a presentation like this, whether it's being in a conversation where you're trying to win a piece of business, where is your focus? Is it in the moment? Is it being present right now? Or are you critiquing yourself? Are you having some personal doubt? Are you thinking of the reasons why they might not sign up with you? Are you thinking of the reasons why the audience might not be liking what you've got to say? Those are the things that are distracting you from performing at your best under pressure. So I started with tennis. I'll finish with tennis. It's actually not my favourite sport, but tennis players seem to have some amazing wisdom to share with us around performing under pressure, and actually have some really good videos. So Roger Federer this year did a commencement speech at Dartmouth where he was actually awarded an honorary degree. If you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to see it. It's a brilliant, brilliant speech. He's so humble, he's so human, but these are the things that got me. He's played 1,526 singles matches. He's won 80% of them, which equates to 1,220. However, what's fascinating is he's only won 54% of the points. We don't have to be brilliant. We just have to have the ability in the moment to win the points that count. And he only won 54% of them. And yet we would describe him as, and he is, one of the best tennis players of our age. And I think it's a really good example of knowing that no matter whether you've won or lost the point, as soon as it's done, it's behind you. You focus on the next one. So if you haven't won that latest client gig, it's behind you. Let go, focus on the next one, because that next one might be one of that 1% of that 54% that will enable you to be successful.